What up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well today. This is the game week that we've all kind of been waiting for this whole season. Game week 26, the first double of the 25-26 FPL season. I'm pretty excited. I already own 3 Arsenal guys and 2 Wolves guys, so I'm pretty stacked up. If you don't know, Arsenal and Wolves are doubling this week, so they will have the points for 2 matches counted in this single game week. All the other teams will be getting their normal single game week points, but Arsenal and Wolves will have the fixtures against each other as well as their normal fixtures counted towards this week's points tally. A double game week is a good time to maximize your bench boost or even a triple captain, and many managers will be looking to triple captain the likes of Gabriel or Declan Rice, as well as some people who are well prepared, who maybe wildcarded in 24 like I did, are kind of set up for a bench boost this week with 5 players who will be doubling. So I can kind of count on a bench boost myself because I'm expecting at least minutes points, which should, be 4 points for the 2 Wolves guys who I have, as well as all of the Arsenal guys who I have in my squads. Some managers will be considering Gabriel on triple captain this week. The effective ownership for all Arsenal defenders will probably be approaching about 200%, which means most people will either be captaining or triple captaining an Arsenal defender. I do think if you wanted to differentiate and risk it with like an Arsenal attacker with the likes of Trossard or Martinelli, if you're confident in their minutes, I would say that I don't really expect any of them to get more than about 160 minutes at most. Obviously, 160 minutes is fantastic, way more than a regular game week, but that's 80 minutes per game. I do expect a sub or maybe even 90 minutes and then 60 minutes, something like that for most of the attackers. So be aware of that, be wary. I do think that there are definitely some nailed assets like the defenders in Gabriel and Saliba and Raya, obviously, and then even Declan Rice and Zubamendi, who I think will start both games. So if you really want to maximize your points, go with the minutes, because in a double game week, that's kind of what you're playing for, is just the accumulation of those minutes and the time spent on the field where it's likely to get a clean sheet, get a goal, get an assist, something that returns an FPL point. So yeah, keep that in mind for choosing your Arsenal assets. I would obviously recommend having 3. And then if you're willing to go for Wolves, I don't think that it's totally necessary. I think that a lot of people will already have Arsenal assets. But if you want to go for a Wolves guy, like someone in the midfield or Mane up front, I think that that's a good option. I think that it is fun to always have a double game weeker. And really, at the very least, you can expect 4 points for 60 minutes in each game. So pretty high floor for both of those, and I think a decent week to be using the bench boost. For me personally as well, I think I will be chasing the Crystal Palace fixture against Burnley at home. Crystal Palace do kind of look like they've steadied the ship with Jefferson Lerma at center back in Mark Guéhi's place. I think Ismaila Sarr and Daniel Munoz or even Maxence Lacroix are the best options to go for in the team, and I will be choosing probably between those 2 defenders and including Ismaila Sarr, especially since Mbeumo walked off with a limp after Manchester United's game against Tottenham last week. He will most likely be my transfer out unless I get rid of Rice in exchange for Raya in goal. In that case, I would then get Rice and Robert Sanchez out for Ismaila Sarr and Raya. Still on the fence about those transfers, as I have to keep in mind that I will be needing to get rid of my Chelsea assets in 2 weeks, and I only have 2 free transfers at the moment. The best captaincy picks this week will be Arsenal assets. Personally, I think Gabriel will be the most popular, with a clean sheet against Wolves pretty likely, and another decent chance of one versus Bournemouth. Both games are away, however, so keep that in mind that a clean sheet is always more difficult away from home. I think targeting the obvious Arsenal double game week as well as the Manchester United, Bournemouth, and the next 2 Chelsea fixtures is where you should be focusing your transfers. Obviously, there is still room to get the usual suspects in, but as far as chasing good opponents, those teams look the best. So think Bruno, Rice, Gabriel, Timber, Raya. And then James Hill and Ryan for Bournemouth I think are pretty good options, as Bournemouth do have some good fixtures coming up. And James Hill is very cheap. He got an assist, DEFCON points last week. And then Ryan is the new guy that they bought in the winter transfer window. He looks to be pretty exciting, taking that right wing spot where Semenyo used to play. So yeah, if he keeps returning, he could be an option in midfield. He's $5.5 million, so pretty cheap. There are a lot of good options around there, but if he keeps returning, he should be on everyone's radar. And then obviously to kind of round out those transfer plans, if you don't have Joao Pedro or Palmer and are interested in chasing these next two fixtures, I think that they're still a decent option as long as you have the transfers to kind of get them back out in a couple weeks, as I don't think that they're very good long-term options. And as you can see here, I do have my transfer plans actually. I did some thinking, and I do think that getting rid of Pascal Strauch and Mbeumo is the best way to go. I will be bringing in Daniel Munoz and Ismail Assar to get that Burnley fixture into my squad for the bench boost. I do think Mbeumo is still a pretty decent option, but Pascal Strauch, I was just a little bit butthurt last week that I started him over Haaland, so obviously a little 7-point swing there. He did get DEFCON, but he's just not the kind of guy that I want in my team at the moment. I kind of want a strong bench, and I already have Mane, who will be my third bench slot after this double game week, so really just trying to kind of beef up my team a little bit. And Mbeumo I will probably look to bring back in a few weeks, but for now I think that I'm willing to get rid of him and chase these really good fixtures that Crystal Palace have. Fingers crossed that Crystal Palace do start to turn things around with that win last week, as I do think that that could be a good turning point. And now that the transfer window is closed, I really am hoping that things do turn out well for them. Now, as I talked about before, for captaincy picks, really, you're probably deciding between one of the Arsenal guys that you own, whether that's Declan Rice or Gabriel. I think both of them are very good options. Gabriel is probably the safer pick with a higher floor. I do expect them to get a clean sheet in one of the two games, and then he's really good for bonus points. He's really good for getting goals off corners. He's just a great pick. Declan Rice, on the other hand, obviously will be getting, the assists from the corners. I just don't think that he plays as high up as he normally does when Odegaard is actually not on the field. And Odegaard is hurt at the moment, so oddly enough, Zubimendi scores more when Odegaard is off, and Rice scores more when Odegaard is on. So, in my opinion, I think that Gabriel is probably the move, although I do think that Declan Rice is kind of due for a haul. It's kind of been a few weeks since he's gotten an assist or a goal, and he's been having a really great year, a really good year in midfield for Arsenal. So I do think that he is kind of due. It's just a little bit more risky than Gabriel. If for some reason you don't have any Arsenal guys in your team, I do have a list of other options this week. I do think Palmer against Leeds at home is going to be a good option. Leeds are still pretty terrible away from home, away from Elland Road, and Palmer's in pretty good form. He did say that he is not feeling 100%, but he played 90 minutes, and I feel like he's not going to want to sit out the next game. I do think that he might be subbed early or come on in the halftime or 60th minute, but I do think that he has the capability that warrants the risk. I do think that you can go for him if you own him. Really just try to capitalize on the fact that he is still a differential right now. And get those captaincy points if you don't want to go for any Arsenal guys. Obviously, kind of set and forget pick is Bruno, and then Timber last of all. I do think that Timber is a slight minutes risk for getting, all 180 minutes between the two games. I do think that he will maybe be rested in one of them, so be a little bit cautious when captaining him, but I do think that obviously it's still two games. Timber should keep a clean sheet in one of them. I do expect him to even get, an attacking return. Wolves are pretty terrible defensively still, and Brentford themselves are not actually the best defensively. So I do think that you can expect an attacking return from any one of these Arsenal guys, as well as the clean sheets that we do tend to expect, which is probably the reason why we would be captaining. Finally, this is kind of how I'm going to be lining up this week. As you can see, I do have my bench boost active. I do have all 3 Chelsea guys against Leeds at home, 3 Arsenal, and then my 2 Crystal Palace guys who I did just bring in, and then Haaland, obviously, who I'm still being patient with as much as I don't want to be. I did bench him last week, so he gets back into the starting lineup, even though it doesn't matter. Basically, I'm not selling him. I'm not willing to sell him if he's going to turn around the ship and set things straight, get back on the score sheet every game. I don't want to sell Haaland when he's 70% owned if he starts returning. So if you sold him, 8 weeks ago, good for you. You really capitalized on that, but that was a big risk. and I think it's a little bit too late to be doing that now. Obviously, Bruno, Enzo, Semenyo, all pretty much mainstays right now. I will be keeping an eye on Semenyo for the future, as I think that he could start getting to be rotated with Marmoush, Doku, Cherokee. I do think that there's going to be a lot of competition in those wing slots for City. So if he starts getting subbed early or anything like that, I will be keeping an eye on him to possibly transfer him out in the coming weeks. All right, yeah, well, that does it for my Game Week 26 video. I hope everyone has a great week. Let me know if you learned something or if there's anything that you would want to see in another video. Any ideas for different segments? I know that there are a lot of creators who do, buy, keep, hold, or sell segments. So if you have any ideas for something like that, let me know. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, obviously, and I hope to see you next time.